Robert stared at the computer screen, heart pounding. He hadn't planned on anything like this happening when he mindlessly typed his question into the search bar. Now there was no taking it back. It had started innocently enough. Still buzzing from a late-night coding session, Robert found himself browsing hidden areas of the internet he'd never visited before. Forum boards advertised themselves where anything could be accessed or asked, no limitations. Curiosity got the best of him as he scrolled anonymous conversations covering all manner of illicit topics. One forum name jumped out, Index. It had a mystique hinting at unlimited information for the right price. Robert knew enough not to provide any personal details, opting for an innocuous test question instead. The name of a John he recalled from a red light district years ago on a trip abroad. A meaningless inquiry. Who cared about some random criminal's identity from the past? But within moments, a private message appeared with not just a name, but intimate details. No outsider should know. Phone records, home addresses, copies of ID documents. It was all laid out with ease, along with a chilling warning. Be careful what you ask for. The past has ways of catching up. Pulse racing, Robert closed the message, not wanting to engage further. It was obviously some elaborate prank or bluff. Meant to shock, he shut down the computer, trying to dismiss it all as creepy showmanship. In the following days, he almost convinced himself it was nothing, the incident fading in memory. That's when the phone calls started, brief silences before hanging up. Robert barely slept, jumping at every sound. The numbers were untraceable. On the third night, a text came through with an address, his parents' house. Below was a photo taken through their front window as they watched TV, unaware. We know who you love. Watch yourself. His blood ran cold. This was no game. Robert realized with dread he'd stumbled into something very dark and very real. The rabbit hole went much deeper than he ever imagined, and there was no easy way back to the surface. Against his instincts, he knew there was only one place to turn for help. Back to the shadowy forums of Index and the predators lurking within. Robert's hands trembled as he logged back into Index. The forum appeared unchanged, an endless scroll of encrypted conversations in unfamiliar code. Taking a steadying breath, he created a new username and posted his message. I need your help. A question I asked brought danger to my family. How do I undo the trail left behind? Minutes passed with no reply. Robert refreshed obsessively, fear and desperation rising. Finally, a private chat window opened from an unknown user. Trails can't be erased so easily once your curiosity is piqued. Information is our currency here. What can you offer in return for our services? Robert hesitated, then typed, I'm a computer science student, proficient in coding and anonymity softwares. I could provide skills or labor for your activities. Just help me make this threat stop. An address appeared, along with terse instructions to come alone at midnight. Robert arrived at an unmarked warehouse, trembling as he unlocked the heavy door. Inside, numerous screens glowed with scrolling data alongside advanced equipment. Two figures sat with their backs to him. You've meddled where you don't belong, boy. Now you face consequences. One spun casually in his chair. Lucky for you, I find your skills. Intriguing. I can end the trail for a small favor. Robert swallowed hard. A snide grin. Excellent. Some. He handed over a thumb drive with hacking tools. Get started. We'll be watching. Robert worked feverishly through the night, pushing past exhaustion and morality. By dawn, the systems were breached. But as the figures reviewed his work, a message popped up. Sudden movement outside, vehicles pulling up fast. Before Robert could react, masked figures stormed in, guns drawn. His hacking had tripped alarms, alerting authorities to the illegal den. In the chaos, a shot rang out. One of the figures fell, clutching his leg among screeching monitors. The leader locked eyes with Robert. "This isn't over," he growled through the pain. 2 weeks had passed in a haze of fear. The gunshot victim, known only as Murdoch, had been laying low to avoid arrest, but his networks required constant maintenance underground. Only Robert possessed the skills to keep them operational remotely. Each night, an encrypted message arrived with new instructions. Robert obeyed without question, driven by the terror of what might happen if he refused. The tasks grew darker: hacking surveillance feeds, covering digital trails for shadowy transactions. He immersed himself in coding to distract from the sinking guilt. This night, a message demanded a meeting. Robert arrived shaken to find Murdoch bandaged but glowering as before. "The feds are closing in. I need someone on the inside to divert their probes." Murdoch tossed over credentials for a seized computer. "Install this in their system. It'll feed back false trails, buying us time." Robert stared, feeling ill. In the police station, a heavy hand slammed down, inches from his own. "Our work kept your family safe so far. Cross me and they pay the price." Heart racing, Robert took a shaky breath. He had no choice but to comply. That night, under cover of darkness, he bypassed security and worked fast to implant the bug. As predicted, it diverted investigations elsewhere, buying Murdoch vital weeks. The jobs grew bolder: hacking court records, intercepting intelligence reports. Robert lost himself in code. Pushing away nausea, he was in over his head. Yet stopping now meant his family's lives. Each success pulled him deeper under Murdoch's control. Then a message sent Robert reeling. "We need access to a classified government facility by weekend. You'll get us inside or your loved ones die." Heart pounding, Robert realized too late he was now complicit in treason, with no way out. Robert moved mechanically through the weekend, barely sleeping. By nightfall, his exhaustion threatened to overwhelm as he drove to the remote coordinates. Murdoch and his men waited in darkness. "Hand over your credentials. We'll bypass security while you divert cameras." Robert complied without a word. Each betrayal felt like another piece of his soul dying. Inside, he worked furiously on the control room terminals as masked figures swept through restricted levels under his looped feed. A data drive was inserted, downloading cache after cache of classified docs and prototypes. Finally, alarms blared. They'd been discovered. Murdoch burst in amid the chaos. "Time to go. Grab what you need." Robert moved to follow numbly before stopping cold. He couldn't let this continue any further. The threat to national security too severe. "No, I can't do this. You got what you wanted from me. Now leave my family alone." Murdoch growled, stepping close enough Robert could smell whiskey on his breath. "Big mistake, kid. Now you die with them." A gun barrel pressed to Robert's temple as sirens neared. In that moment, flashing lights appeared behind them. Reinforcements had arrived, trapping them inside. Keeping his cool, Robert slowly raised his hands. "It's over, Murdoch. You're finally caught. Drop the weapon before this gets worse for you both." For all eyes bored into Robert's as heated whistles screamed outside. With a sneer, Murdoch slowly lowered the gun and kicked it away. Moments later, armed SWAT teams flooded the area, taking them into custody amid shouted orders. In interrogation, Robert told all. From his innocent mistake to his torture underneath Murdoch's control through hellish tasks, the evidence backed his story. Though consequences couldn't be avoided, his only solace was the threat finally ended for good. 6 months later, Robert was released with a light sentence due to his cooperation. Outside the gates, his parents waited with open arms as he began the long road to heal past wounds. Though scars remained, Robert took the first steps into a life finally free from the long shadow of his fateful encounter with the dark underbelly of Index. The nightmares always started the same. Flashes of shadowy figures swarming through abandoned streets, voices echoing as if underwater. Gunfire ripped through the dusty air, muzzles flashing in windows above. I was back in that hell, fighting enemies both seen and unseen. This time was different. I felt the blow before seeing my attacker, something heavy slamming into my side with tremendous force. Collapsing into darkness, I glimpsed a hooded figure quickly fading from view. Cool air caressed my face as awareness returned. Harsh fluorescent lights burned my eyes open. Sterile ceilings swam into focus above stark white walls. Bandages encased my torso, pain throbbing deep beneath the wrappings. A nurse entered, smile fading at my puzzled expression. "Don't you remember, honey? You were shot outside your apartment 3 days ago. The doctors say it's a miracle you survived." Confusion gave way to realization. Someone had tried to finish what the war began, but who and why? Questions swirled as memories flickered like broken film reels. I needed answers, but the doctors said my recovery came first. Physical therapy proved a slow, agonizing process. Weeks passed in that colorless room, forcing weakened muscles to obey once more. My attacker's identity remained as blurred as that night outside the apartment. Only fragments surfaced from the haze, a figure dragging me inside, muffled voices making frantic calls. Then nothing until waking here. When discharged, an inspection of my ransacked home turned up little evidence beyond a bloody trail leading to the front door. The police filed a report, but had no leads beyond vague witness accounts. Whoever did this knew how to cover their tracks. I began combing through old letters, emails, and photos in search of clues. Familiar faces stared back from happier times, relics of a previous life, now slipping further into the past. One image caught my eye, a unit photo taken in those dusty streets, smiles hiding private hells we all carried home. Someone in that photo wanted me dead. I felt it in my gut. But which shadowy figure was the threat? Each night, the nightmares returned with renewed ferocity. Faces merged into grotesque masks, voices warping into inhuman howls echoing down the barrel of an unseen gun. Waking brought no relief, only an oppressive silence pressing in from all sides. Anger and suspicion built like a pressure valve, ready to burst. I needed answers before it was too late, one way or another. My search led to hidden corners of the internet, places law enforcement warned carried grave risks. There, I began gently probing contacts from my military days, subtly gathering fragments about former comrades and their activities since leaving the service. One name kept cropping up in hushed tones: Samuels, a former commander rumored to be laundering cash through illicit arms deals in the Balkans. Sifting the contact's cautious replies, a thread emerged. Samuels viewed loose ends as liabilities. And after our unit's return, there had been whispers of accidents befalling those asking too many questions of his ventures. Was I next on his list for the very same reason? My instincts told me the answer lay with Samuels. If only I could get to him before he tied up one last loose end for good. The lead was going cold fast. Weeks of covert monitoring yielded little beyond confirmation of Samuel's continued involvement in arms trafficking throughout Eastern Europe. He maintained a low profile, meticulously covering his tracks between deals conducted through waves of encrypted messages and dead drops. Frustration mounted as each digital thread led nowhere. I began taking greater risks, arranging in-person meetings with old contacts under the guise of reconnection. Subtle prodding revealed increasing unease around Samuels and rumors of accidents, silencing those asking the wrong kind of questions. During a night of fitful sleep, an idea came. Samuels had grown complacent in his isolation, believing himself above consequence. But an opportunity was forming, one threading the needle between provocation and entrapment. The next day's encrypted message to Samuels left no margin for misinterpretation. A damning file from our time in Afghanistan had mysteriously found its way online, one tracing funds directly back to his operations. While deletion remained possible, the file's virality hinted at wider distribution. Perhaps a meeting could resolve this. Unfortunate situation, face to face. No records. His response was predictably terse, naming an isolated coordinates in the remote hills. 2 days hence. I would come alone, unarmed, and ensure no evidence of our talks went public. Refusal meant the file's contents spreading like wildfire. He had taken the bait. The appointed night saw me quietly approaching under blackened skies. Run. Down cabins dotted the forested valley below, moonlight casting their decay into stark relief. Scanning for movement through night. Vision goggles. I began my descent into the darkness. A lone figure paced one cabin's porch, silhouetted by a single dim bulb behind closed curtains. Edging closer unseen, I spied Samuels through a crack in warped siding, face pale and drawn in flickering shadows. His hand drifted to the pistol on his hip as if awaiting ghosts. Sliding the goggles onto my forehead, I emerged with hands raised. Samuels, it's me. We need to talk. He whirled, weapon raised. Years of hidden sins had honed his edge as finely as mine. You should be dead, like the others. But it seems rats always find a way to squirm free. Is that why you put a bounty on my head? My blood began to boil, but I held fast, awaiting his unraveling. Samuel studied me coldly. Loose ends have a habit of tangling attempts to move on with fresh pursuits. I trust this. Meeting resolves both our difficulties. Yes. His veiled threat confirmed all. Years spent evading justice for his crimes had only deepened the rot within. I had succeeded in forcing this confrontation, but where it led remained to be seen. Tension hung thick as we faced off in the dim light. Samuels inspected me coolly, finding only hardened resolve where weakness once existed. It's over, Samuels, I said flatly. I know what you've been doing since we returned. All the deals, the laundered cash, and the men silenced along the way. A humorless smile curled his lip. Do you now? And what exactly do you intend, coming out here alone as I requested? The truth will find its way out, one way or another. Better it comes from you. His lip curled further. The truth. Such an idealistic notion for idealistic fools. Out here, away from prying eyes and legalities, there is only power. Samuels's hand drifted closer to his holster as he took a measured step forward. I stood my ground, watching for the moment to act. You always did have a soft heart, trusting in principles over practicality, he continued. But laws don't apply in these shadows. I walk. Only power protects what's mine, as it always has. Another step closed the gap, his weapon now within easy reach. I tensed, fight or flight instincts kicking into overdrive. Samuels's eyes glinted with something darker than I recalled, as if long drowned under inky waves. It's unfortunate matters led to this, he said almost gently. You were a promising soldier once, but that life is behind you now, as are any delusions of justice prevailing tonight. His hand closed around the pistol grip. I struck with the speed of a coiled viper, seizing his wrist and using my momentum to spin him around. Bones crunched as his arm bent at unnatural angles, the weapon falling awas. Raw instinct took over as Samuels roared and threw an elbow my way. Years of honed fighting skills rose to the surface, responding to each blow with practiced precision. We crashed through the cabin in a blur of violence, furniture splintering under flying limbs. Hatred and memories fueled our attacks, drawing forth demons buried long ago on foreign soil. Somehow, I found myself atop him, rain now pattering the warped roof as thunder rumbled in the valley below. Samuels writhed weakly, blood dribbling from his parted lips onto the rain. Slicked floorboards. Through the red haze, I saw only a monster responsible for countless ruined lives. Men who gave their lives for lies. Families left forever missing loved ones due to his machinations. My hands found his throat, squeezing with crushing force as his legs kicked feebly. Darkness clouded my vision and mind alike, an all-consuming void dragging me down into its depths. Only something primal roared for release within its storms. I was so close to granting that dark wish, avenging all the souls damned by this man's evil. Then, through the blackness, a distant memory emerged, of friends lost, but also found again in each other during that hell on earth, of shared hopes in the face of horrors, and humanity, persevering even where all seemed lost. My grip fell away, breath heaving as clarity returned. Rain pattered down mercifully, washing some small fraction of filth from hands now stained crimson. Samuel's lay broken, barely clinging to life by trembling threads. The truth was revealed at last, and vengeance within my grasp. But in confronting ghosts of the past, I found the man I had become was not the monster lying prone before me. Resolution had come, as I knew it must, in facing darkness and emerging with humanity intact. My mission was fulfilled. Dawn light shone weakly through thinning clouds as I drove the secluded roads from those ruined hills. Samuels had lived just long enough for a full confession before the light left his eyes, implicating co-conspirators who would face justice in time. For now, a weight had lifted in casting off ghosts, which pursued me so mercilessly since that day in the desert long ago. Yet their echoes still resonated somewhere deep, visible only in the haunting interludes of fitful sleep. Peace would not come easily after so much endured in darkness, but the first steps began in leaving that forsaken place, with its clinging miasma of past evils excised at last. What lay ahead remained uncertain, save the warming sun, heralding a new day's awakening. I opted for solitude for the coming days, holding up in a spare apartment far from prying eyes or connections to my previous life. Silence soothed as contemplation turned inward, sifting meaning from memories with care and discretion. Faces surfaced anew, comrades lost and others found in brief moments, piercing the haze of warfare. Familiar depths reflected back in each, revealing shared struggles acknowledged yet seldom voiced during that hell. Their spirits whispered of perseverance beyond circumstance, and redemption to be found wherever humanity may yet linger. Time passed without notice as ghosts relinquished their tenacious grip. Sleep came easy and dreamless, restoring what years of torment had eroded. Clarity dawned regarding paths forward, away from shadows haunting a past which could no longer claim mastery of the present. A package arrived containing items salvaged from my former home. Photographs, letters, and memoirs of happier times before darkness descended. Fond recollections arose in tracing loved ones, dotted throughout, capturing brightness which once illuminated before being shrouded too long in grimness. Reconnecting gradually mended frayed bonds, met with gratitude for survival against improbable odds. Warmth flourished anew where isolation had taken root. Strength resurfaced through sympathetic ears, lending their give and take. Purpose flourished where purposelessness once festered. Days blended into weeks, stirring life from dormancy, body and soul regaining lost vigor. The time had come to emerge into a sunnier world and face what challenges may await with steadied heart and clearer sight. Ghost's dominion had ended where it began, in confrontation facing darkness and emerging with humanity intact. Now, a new chapter could truly begin. Daniel clicked the download link with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "We really don't have to do this, Amelia," he said, glancing nervously at his friend. "There has to be other games we can review." Amelia rolled her eyes. "Don't chicken out now," she retorted. "Think of the views this will get us. No one else has managed to beat the unplayable game. We'll be internet famous." Daniel wasn't convinced, but he couldn't back down with Amelia watching. As the download completed, he began to question how far their ambition would take them into the dark corners of the internet. Amelia leaned in eagerly as Daniel opened the file. Much like the stories around it, the game's interface was sparse and uninviting. Just a wordless logo above a prompt reading "Begin." Against his better judgment, Daniel clicked yes. They found themselves in a bare virtual room with blank white walls. A figure sat alone at a table ahead of them. "Welcome," its voice crackled through their headphones. "You seek what few have found. Let the game begin." The room grew colder. Suddenly, a door opened behind them, leading down a steep and twisted staircase. Before he could think better of it, Amelia edged forward with Daniel reluctantly in tow. Deeper into the rabbit hole they descended, the air becoming thick and damp. Strange noises echoed along the crumbling stone walls. "We shouldn't have come," muttered Daniel as his friend pulled him around another turn. At the bottom, a dimly lit corridor stretched endlessly in both directions. A low scraping sound rushed toward them from the left. Against the light, they saw only a dark, hulking shape. Daniel jumped back with a cry as it reached out, but its touch was gentle. "Have courage." A glowing orb hovered between them, its wispy voice soothing yet grim. "Your journey has begun. Seek the truth, if you can survive it." With that, it winked out, leaving Daniel and Amelia alone in the gloom. They turned to each other, aware escape was no longer an option. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" whispered Daniel. Amelia simply took his hand and led on into the shadows, hoping her boldness could shield them from whatever nightmares lurked ahead. The endless corridor proved a labyrinth without exits. After hours of circling its twists and turns, Daniel sank down in despair. "We're doomed here forever," he groaned. Amelia knelt beside him. "Then we keep searching. I won't let this be the end." Taking his hand again, she smiled faintly. "Remember why we came. Let's find out what this game really wants." Renewed, they pressed on until a door emerged ahead, radiating a pale blue light. Cautiously opening it revealed an open field under a featureless gray sky. Though bare, its vastness offered escape from the stifling passageways. But as they celebrated their freedom, the skies darkened and an icy wind blew in. Daniel shivered, rubbing his hands. "I feel so cold all of a sudden." His breath appeared before him, and Amelia hugged herself tightly. "This can't be real. We're not really outside, are we?" Her words were confirmed as text materialized in the empty air. "You have entered the ether. Here there are no warmth, shelter, or sustenance. Survival depends on completing your tasks in time. Fail, and the elements will claim you." Daniel stared in horror. Tasks. What tasks? This is sick. More text. "If you wish to advance, seek the obelisks. There you will learn your trials. But choose wisely. Not all roads lead to salvation. The cost of failure is yours alone to bear." Amelia gritted her teeth. "Fine. Let's play along and figure a way out." They headed into the howling winds, navigating by glimpses of looming shadowy pillars on the horizon. Reaching the first, runes flickered to life on its smooth black surface. A challenge was posed. Venture into the barrens alone, unarmed, and locate a hidden symbol before nightfall. Retrieve it to proceed, or face the elements. Amelia met Daniel's frightened eyes. "I won't let you endanger yourself. I'll go fast and be back soon, I promise." Before he could refuse, she kissed his cheek and disappeared into the bleak valley beyond. Daniel paced frantically, watching the gray sky darken. Just as total blackness fell, Amelia emerged victoriously waving the symbol, but her smile faded at his anguished expression. "What's wrong?" He pointed a shaking finger. On her jacket, a crimson stain was slowly spreading. Amelia clutched her side with a grimace. "It's nothing." "Just a scratch," she insisted, though her tone wavered. Daniel's heart sank further at the sight of blood seeping between her fingers. He helped lower her to sit, examining the wound in the dim glow of the obelisk. "This is serious. We need to treat it." Rummaging through his pockets, he found only empty space where supplies should be. The game stripped us of everything, he realized with panic. "There has to be a way." Amelia leaned weakly against the smooth black stone. "Keep looking while I rest. And don't let this deter you from the tasks." Reluctantly, Daniel turned back to the runes, which had changed. The next challenge was revealed. Enter the mines and recover an elixir said to heal any affliction. He squeezed Amelia's hand. "I'll be back, I promise." Within the mine shaft's gloom, Daniel's flashlight flickered, as if straining against this place. Cobwebs layered the tunnel walls, and rattling echoed ahead, growing louder. He peered fearfully around each turn until a pile of bones barred his path. A shriek rent the air and a gnarled creature lunged out, slashing. Daniel barely dodged, heart pounding. Pushing past it, he ran blindly until a glint caught his eye. A flask inside an alcove, liquid glowing azure within. Triumph turned to horror as another shriek rent the air behind him. He grabbed the elixir and sprinted, feeling hot breath on his heels. Staggering into the night, the mine shaft collapsed behind in a cloud of dust and screams. Amelia woke as Daniel poured the potion into her wound. Instantly, the bleeding stopped and skin began knitting together. "You did it," she sighed with a weak smile. Fresh runes then took form. Journey to the ruins and locate clues to the mastermind behind this game. Go together for safety in numbers. Return alone or not at all. With Amelia's strength returning, they ventured into the crumbling stone village. Among shattered pillars and yawning pits, they gathered scraps, mentioning the architect seeking worthy initiates. But one building remained intact, a lone metal door set incongruously into the rock. Daniel tested the door with trembling hands. Locked tight. He turned to Amelia, worriedly, but she was already scanning for clues, pocketing strange trinkets found scattered near overturned altars. One idol caught her eye, depicting a horned figure gesturing to a control panel emerging from stone. "Look," quickly inputting symbols from their discoveries. She hit enter on the revealed keypad. With a rumble, the ground split beneath them. They clutched each other, plunging through darkness until landing hard in a glowing chamber. Coughing, they took in banks of flashing monitors showing countless players struggling through terrible ordeals. A hollow laugh echoed. "Welcome, initiates, to my domain." From shadows, a robed figure emerged, radiating power and malice. "You alone have solved all my puzzles. For that you alone have solved all my puzzles. For that you have earned a place at my side as my disciples forever shaping new souls in my games." Rage flared in Daniel at the implied fate. "You monster. All those people who died. For what? Your sick thrills." Amusement curled the man's lips. Merely weeding out the unworthy. True champions emerge strengthened through trial by fire, reforged in my image. Now kneel and accept the honor I bestow. His voice cracked like a whip, but they stood defiantly. Amelia met Daniel's eyes and nodded. Together they charged the controls, overloading systems in a shower of sparks. Mayhem ensued as prisoners' holds were released. Shrieking them freed, the man howled, flinging curses and spells that barely missed. In the chaos, Daniel grabbed a fallen scepter, using its magic to pin their foe against cracking monitor glass. There, a final struggle took place as the world crumbled around them. With a scream, the man was pulled screaming into the void between realms, his final grimace etched against the black. Daniel took Amelia's hand, grinning despite wounds and weariness. "It's over. Let's go home." They turned to the dimming doorway, light ahead beckoning them to the life waiting beyond this nightmare's end. The light ahead was blinding after so long in darkness. Daniel shielded his eyes, pulling Amelia closer as they stepped through the doorway. Reality came rushing back. Coarse grass underfoot, sun warm on their faces. They stood on a hilltop, gazing down at a quaint town nestled in green valleys. No sign of the ruins or desolation they left behind in the game. Amelia smiled, tracing the tree line with her eyes. "It's over. We made it." Daniel hugged her tight, overcome. "I knew we could do it if we stuck together." His grin faded as flashes of the nightmares returned, creatures lunging from the shadows, their captors' maniacal laughter. It all seemed so real. He voiced the doubts plaguing him. Taking his hands, Amelia met his eyes steadily. "Whatever was real, we faced it and survived. That shows something about our strength and bond, too. As for the rest, I think some mysteries are better left unknown. What matters is we're free." Daniel nodded slowly, releasing a long breath. "You're right. It's in the past. We have a future to look to now." And so they began the long walk down from that hill, the events below slowly receding into a strange dream. In time, the scars would fade, though memories of darkness and lights guiding each other home would remain. Their ordeal sparked a new perspective. Life was fleeting, and every day a gift. With grateful hearts, they embraced each moment, forging new paths guided not by ambition alone, but also compassion for others thrust into trials of their own. Though shadows would always lurk at edge of light, together they found strength to face whatever lay beyond the darkness.